Today, we're going to be taking a tour around the state of Utah to learn a little bit more about war and about religion in this state. Let's go.
Well, I didn't know me like I know me now. Sometimes you gotta get lost so you can get found.
Okay, we've traveled here to central Utah. This is Delta, Utah, the site of the Topaz exclusion zone for Japanese Americans. So during World War II, in 1942, there was a decree made after Pearl Harbor attacks that all Japanese that lived in California and along the west coast of the United States were supposed to go to over 10 different exclusion zones across the United States. This is what the camps used to look like back when the Japanese were here. So all the individual camps were set up in rows, and as you can see, there was a lot of order to the system that they had set up. About 15 miles out from the Topaz Museum is the original site of the Japanese internment camps. And as you can see, this barren landscape is the perfect place for the United States government to hide and conceal something like this. So many people ask how such an injustice like Topaz could happen against our country. Well, people allow prejudice and fear to influence their decisions that they make. Racial, religious, ethnic influences, and during World War II, there was lots of influences and decisions in making to allow the government to have so many people come to the exclusion zone. But it seems like politicians always pushed war and national security as an excuse to forget civil liberties. I'm here in Memory Grove Park, downtown Salt Lake City, Utah. Just below the Capitol building, this wall behind me depicts the names of Utahns who served in the Korean War. This wall of honor names those Korean War veterans who served to keep our country safe. Today, it's a popular place for people to take their dogs and to spend time with loved ones. Many memorials that were created in Memory Grove Park were erected in the early 1900s in memory of those who served in World War I and World War II. I'm here outside the LDS Conference Center in the heart of Salt Lake City, Utah, downtown. The original tabernacle is still located inside Temple Square. Across the street is the Conference Center. Founded in the 1800s by Brigham Young and his group of Mormon followers, Temple Square is one of the most important religious symbols in Utah. We're here at historic Cove Fort in Beaver, Utah, and we've just taken a tour of the fort that's here. This fort was originally built by the Hinckley family, which was a Mormon settlement, and it was built to protect themselves from Indians. Now, when the family was originally here, they thought the Indians were hostile, but one day, Mr. Hinckley woke up and opened the door and found 7 Indians outside, and he took them in and fed them dinner. So this site is an example of a crossover between religion and war. The historic cove walls are built out of basalt rock, which gets thicker and then thinner as it goes to the top. The walls are so smooth, as if you look along that, you can see right to the other end. And the original families that lived here were the cove was built along a trade line, and horse-drawn carriages would come along the main road and would eventually stop for shelter and for food. We interviewed with Sister Butler, a Mormon missionary who has been called to serve here at Cove Fort. Cove Fort is owned by the Mormon Church and was originally founded by Mormons.
Yeah, that's right. These are patterned after the castles in Europe.
Yeah, I was gonna say it looks like a castle.
This is a good.
Hear the audio in here. It's so interesting.
Yeah, that's a good place to see how thick the walls are too.
Yeah. Yeah, about 2 or 3 feet thick there.
They're 4 feet thick at the bottom and 2 at the top.
Okay.
So the inside wall is straight.
So yeah, I can see
like
how it went.
this, and the outside wall comes up like that.
Yeah. I'm here at historic Camp Floyd in Fairfield, Utah. Behind me is the Stagecoach Inn. This is the place of the historic Johnson's Army, which was established in the United States in the early 1800s. Johnson's Army was sent by President Buchanan to the Utah Territory to get rid of Brigham Young, who was the governor of the Utah Territory. And over 1/3 of the entire United States Army was stationed here in order to keep the Mormons from revolting against the United States Army. When the governor of Utah, Brigham Young, heard about Johnson's army coming, he thought that they were here to overthrow the Mormons. They had already been sent out of Missouri and had been pushed westward so much, but he thought that this army was here to kick them out. So he and his people set up a brigade and they tried to stop Johnson's army. But during this time, the United States Army had lots of trouble coming out here. There was snow and there were different weather conditions that prevented them from coming. And once they reached the fort, they barely had enough energy to be able to overthrow the Mormons. I'm here at the Fort Douglas War Museum at the University of Utah, home to many significant war artifacts from World War I and World War II. We met with museum curator Bo Burgess to learn why Camp Douglas was important to Utah's war history.
Fort Douglas was originally founded as Camp Douglas in 1862. So it's kind of the second big presence of the military and the federal government in that capacity out here in the Utah Territory. So they come in October of 1862, and so they come out here. They're put here as a strategic post to watch over communications going back and forth. You've got the overland route, you get the telegraph lines, all that stuff going through. The funding going back and forth between California. It takes funding to win a war. It takes communication to win a war, strategy. And they also say, well, what are the Mormons doing out here? Who are they siding with? What's going on with the locals? You need to know as part of all of those strategies what's going on there. So with that, the military does have a presence then over several different eras and conflicts here, from the Civil War all the way up. You've got Spanish-American War, World War I, World War II, Korea conflict, Vietnam, and then all the way up to 1991, it's Fort Douglas. And then in 1991, when they decommission, basically close it down, they reopened next door to us here that you can see that still exists today, the Stephen A. Douglas Armed Forces Reserve Center. And now we're actually part of the University of Utah campus as well, but we stayed the historic museum that's been here for 42 years at this point.
Fort Douglas has many different types of machinery used in World War I and World War II, including this tank behind me. Other artifacts include helicopters, machine guns, and large turrets. Dedicated in 1909, the Cathedral of the Madeleine is one of the most ornate buildings in the entire state of Utah. Featuring several Gothic features, including gargoyles and different statues on the side of the building. This building took over 20 years to build. The large bell above the church rings every single day to signal the beginning of church services. Organists commonly play inside the building, as you can hear. Completed in the late 1800s, St. Mark's Episcopal Church is one of the oldest still operating churches in Utah. Known for its ornate stained glass windows, St. Mark's Episcopal Church is one of the most ornate churches in Utah. One of its most prominent features, the giant iron bell on top, is as old as the church is. The church also includes large wooden doors of the same style. Well, what have we learned today? We've learned that war and religion are integral parts of Utah's history. We've also learned that many different people have contributed to Utah's rich history, and that war and religion are both important parts of Utah. Catch you next time.
I don't know why you think that you could help me when you couldn't get by yourself. And I don't know who would ever wanna tell the seam of someone's dream. Baby, it's fine. You said that we should just be friends while I came up.